My name is Claire, and I live in Boston, America. My wedding was only hours away, and the dress hung from the closet door like a quiet guest. The morning was cool and a little wet, and the street below my window shone with a thin gloss from last night's rain. I made coffee and tried to eat half a banana, but my hands shook and the banana tasted like paper. I told myself nerves were normal. I told myself love was stronger than fear. I checked my bag again, lip balm, a comb, my small notes for the vows, and an envelope with $120 for tips. The number looked sharp in ink. Everything felt sharp. I needed to hear my sister's voice, the way she talks like she is smoothing a blanket. So I decided to stop by Emily's house in Cambridge before I went to the church. Emily rents the blue house with a white trim and the porch swing that never stops creaking. The maple tree out front drops red leaves in fall and sticky seedlings in spring. The house is not big, but it looks friendly from the sidewalk, with 2 windows like calm eyes and a small step that always needs paint. Emily says she'll buy a place one day when she gets a raise. She keeps a jar on her shelf marked House Fund, and each week she puts in $10. I have watched her do it the way a person watches a candle being lit, a small, steady thing that pushes back the dark. I thought of that jar now as I pulled on my shoes and grabbed a box of cookies I had picked up yesterday, lemon, her favorite, $12 plus tax. I left my apartment as if I were sneaking out of a theater before the end, trying not to wake the ending that was waiting for me. The ride across the river was slow. I hit a red light at every block, and the radio kept playing cheerful songs that made my throat tight. I switched it off and let the noise of Boston fill the car. Bus brakes sighing, a siren in the distance, a man laughing into his phone as he crossed the street. I thought about Daniel, my fiancé, waiting at the church with his best man, Michael. Daniel has a way of standing with his hands in his pockets like he's holding a secret he plans to share with me first. We met in Chicago years ago, standing outside a bookstore because the owner had put out a table of used paperbacks for $2 each, and we both reached for the same copy of a novel with a cracked spine. His eyes were green, his coat too thin for the wind, and he smiled like a person who knows how to say sorry. We talked for an hour, and when the cold got to us we went inside and split a hot chocolate that cost $3.50 and felt like a promise. We kept the book. It sits on my shelf at home with a small note tucked inside. First day, written in Daniel's hand. Traffic thin near Cambridge, and I drove down the narrow street where Emily lives. The porch swing was moving, though I couldn't see anyone on it. Sometimes the wind does that, or the neighbor's cat jumps into it for fun. The house smelled like lemon cleaner even from the steps, because Emily believes in starting a day with clean counters. The front door was unlocked, as always. I pushed it open and called her name, a soft M that tried to be casual and landed as a wish. The hallway was narrow, with family pictures down one side. Me and Emily at the beach in a year where our swimsuits were loud and our teeth were too big. Our parents, Linda and Mark, at a cheap diner with a plate of pancakes between them. A graduation cap tilted wrong on Emily's head. A picture of Aunt Rose in New York holding a tiny dog that costs more to groom each month than I spend on coffee. I smiled at all of it. I wanted to be a person who could hold both the past and the day ahead in 2 open hands. I was halfway down the hall when I heard voices. They were low and careful, the kind of voices people use when they don't want to wake a sleeping child, or when they are afraid of being heard. I stopped without thinking because the words had my name in them, not once but twice, like 2 knocks on a door. My mother's voice came first, soft and tight. "We can't keep this from Claire," she said, and the sound of my name in her mouth made the back of my neck go cold. My father spoke next, slow as always. "Truth is cheap and lies are not," he said, and I pictured him at the kitchen table counting the week's bills with his glasses low on his nose, his thumb licking the edge of paper. Then Emily spoke, and her voice had the fear sugar I know too well. "I tried to tell her," she said. "I just kept waiting for the right time." There was a pause, and in it I heard the porch swing creak again, a lonely sound, like a door in a small storm. I should have cleared my throat. I should have knocked on the wall, made a joke, dropped the cookie box, anything to announce myself. I did not. I stood still as a lamppost and listened, because the day was thin as glass, and the voices were a stone. "It was one kiss," Emily said. I told Daniel it was a mistake. He said the same. We both said we would tell her. We didn't. The lemon smell turned sharp in my nose. One kiss. The words were simple, and they were a fire. For a second my body forgot how to be a body. My feet did not feel my shoes. My chest did not feel my breath. My mind ran fast in a tight circle, like a dog in a yard too small, looking for a gate that was not there. In my head, money kept ticking. The hall had cost $3,200. The band was $900. The white peonies were $180, and I had joked that flowers should come with coupons. The rings were $1,500 together, simple gold bands, chosen with care not to look like anything more than a promise. My parents had sent a small transfer to help, and my father wrote the amount in his small book where he writes every number. Emily had slipped me 20 pounds from a trip to Europe and said it was for good luck, and we laughed because we both knew I would never spend it. I kept it in my wallet like a thin charm. All these figures sat up in my mind now and stared at me, quiet and wrong, like chairs pushed back after a sudden rise from the table. I thought of Daniel's face when he laughs, the way his eyes close for 1 second, as if the joy is too bright. I thought of his hands, his coat, the first hot chocolate, the book. I thought of trust the way you think of air when the room goes dark. The door to the kitchen opened, and my mother saw me. She put a hand to her throat the way she does when a car stops too close at a crosswalk. My father stood up, so fast his chair knocked the wall. Emily's eyes filled in 1 second. She said my name, Claire, as if she were stepping onto ice and unsure if it would hold. I did not run. I did not scream. I did not drop the cookies. I walked into the kitchen like a person walking into a bank to move money from one account to another. I sat. I placed the box on the table. I folded my hands so they would not shake. Tell me everything, I said. Tell me now. Don't leave out one word. I can take it. I cannot take guessing. My mother reached across the table, but I kept my hands folded because I needed an edge to hold. My father looked at me as if I were a letter he could not bear to open. Emily told the story, and it was small in shape and huge in weight. Late spring. Too much wine. A song. A fight I had had with Daniel about where we would live, Boston or New York, and whether we would ever move again, and if we could save $500 per month without making our lives feel thin. She said she wanted comfort and picked the worst light to find it. She said she kissed him first, and he kissed her back, and they both pulled away as if a fire alarm had gone off, and then they tried to put the day away on a high shelf. They failed. They tried again. They failed again. Weeks became months. The wedding came closer like a train that does not stop. They told themselves, after the wedding, and then, maybe never, and then, we can't. The words fell onto the table one by one, and lay there like coins I did not want to spend. I listened. I asked short questions because long ones would break. Where? When? How long? Why? The answers were plain and hard. My mother cried once, and then stopped and then started again, like a faucet that will not fully close. My father did not cry. He looked at the wall clock and then at me, and then at the clock again, as if time were a person we could bargain with for a few more minutes of safety. I thought about the church, the guests, the cooked food, the tips, the band tuning their instruments, the chairs in rows, the small kids in nice shoes that hurt their feet. I thought about Daniel in his suit, green eyes and careful hands, and how I had always liked that he understood the price of things and still wanted more than money can buy. I thought about the future like it was a house with the lights off. You open the door and you walk in, and you feel for the switch. Sometimes the switch is where you expect. Sometimes it is not. When Emily finished, the room went quiet. I heard the porch swing again. I heard a truck on the street. I heard my own breath counting like a child who hides behind a couch. 1, 2, 3, and so on, and then back to 1. I looked at my sister and saw not a rival, not a thief, but a person who did a wrong thing because she was sad and human and did not stop herself in time. I looked at my parents and saw love in panic, the kind that spills and makes a mess on the clean floor. I looked at my own hands and saw a woman who would have to choose her next step and pay for it in full. I picked up the cookie box and pushed it toward Emily. "Open it," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to a person with steady feet. She opened it. We stared at the lemon cookies like they were a map. "I need to see Daniel," I said. "I need to hear his voice and look at his eyes. Then I'll know what to do today." My father stood, already reaching for his keys. "I'll drive," he said. My mother wiped her face and squared her shoulders like a captain. Emily held the box and whispered, "I'm sorry," and I nodded because that word, at least, was true and cost what it should. My father, Mark, jingled his keys like a small bell and led me out of Emily's blue house. The porch swing was still now, the maple steady as a guard. Linda, my mother, pressed a tissue into my hand and told me to breathe from my belly. I nodded and did as told, because simple orders are a gift when the heart is loud. Emily stood in the doorway with the lemon cookies in her arms like a newborn she didn't know how to hold.
"Call me," she said.
I said, "I will," and believed it. Love can live in the same room as anger, like two tired people who agree to share a couch. We took my father's old sedan. The seat was warm from the sun. He drove the quiet way along the river, not the fast way by the little shops in Cambridge where I once bought a vase for $18 and told myself it meant I was an adult. Neither of us spoke for the first few blocks. I watched a woman run with a dog that looked like a shag rug, watched a man in a suit carry a pizza box, watched a bus groan away from a stop. It felt like the whole of Boston was doing normal things, and I was the only person whose day had split in two. "Claire," my father said, eyes on the road, "I'll support what you choose. If you want to turn around, we turn. If you want to go on, we go." He has always been like that, steady, practical, a wallet with receipts in order, and a brain that counts even in sleep. I thought of how he once showed me how to balance a checkbook with a pencil and a ruler, and how I laughed and used an app instead, and how he laughed too and said, "Use what helps." I reached for his arm. "Thank you," I said. My voice was low. "Today I go." He nodded once, like a judge who accepts a plea. We passed a real estate office with glossy photos in the window. One house had a red door and a small porch with 2 chairs and a neat row of pots. Price, $520,000. I did the quiet math I always do, down payment, rate, tax, insurance, and set the sum aside like a coin I could not spend. I wanted a house one day, but I wanted a good floor, more than a good price. Across the street, a thrift store had a sign that read, "Second chances, $5 and up," and I almost laughed, but the sound stayed in my chest. "Your mother will meet us there," my father said. "She's calling the caterer about what to do with the food." We paid a deposit of $1,200 and we'll lose some of it, but we'll save what we can. Money again, the quiet drum of it. I was glad for the topic, even if it was a small pain. Money makes a shape you can look at. Feelings sprawl all over the table and into the hall. The church sat at the end of a side street, white steeple like a lifted finger, brick steps scrubbed clean. I had walked up those steps last week to practice with Michael, the best man, and Sarah, my maid of honor, and we had made jokes about tripping and how much that would cost in pride. Now the bricks felt new and far away. My father parked and cut the engine. He turned to me. "You can ask me to come in," he said, "or to wait. I can be a wall or a door." I looked at him and saw the man who taught me to ride a bike in Chicago, the man who fixed a leaky pipe in our old Boston kitchen with a part that cost $7 and a curse he tried to swallow. "Be the door," I said. He got out and walked with me to the side room where Daniel waited. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of old wood and fresh paper. I could hear a low hum, guests in the sanctuary, the band warming strings, the murmur of plans made and unmade. A white sign leaned on an easel by the coat rack. "Welcome, Claire and Daniel." I felt my name and his like 2 bricks lifted in one hand. Daniel stood by a small table, working a cufflink that didn't want to close. Michael hovered by the window with a tie draped around his neck. When they saw me, both went still. Michael, kind man that he is, said, "I'll give you 2 a minute," and slipped out with a fast shuffle of someone who knows where not to stand. Daniel's face moved through three things: relief, fear, love, and settled on hopeful, and that hurt most of all. He took one step.
Claire, he said.
The sound of my name in his mouth was the same as ever and not the same at all. I lifted a hand. Let me speak first. He stopped, hands open. I told him what I had heard at the Blue House in the Lemon Hall between my sister and my parents. I said the word kiss only once, because I did not want to make a groove in the room where that word could sit forever. As I spoke, he closed his eyes like a man who has walked into wind. When I finished, he opened them and did not look away. I should have told you, he said. I was a coward. It was one kiss. I hated it the second it happened. I hate it now. I love you. I want our life. The cheap dinners, the shared bills, the fights about New York and Boston, and how to save $500 a month without feeling poor. I will do the work. I will pay every cost. I watched him. Love is a truth, and so is a fact, and they do not cancel each other out. I thought of Sarah in the sanctuary, of Linda counting plates, of Mark outside like a guard who also carries snacks. I thought of Emily holding lemon cookies like a white flag. I thought of the book from the day we met for $2, the hot chocolate for $3.50, the ring receipt for $750, my band for $750, the peonies for $180, the hall for $3,200. I thought of Aunt Rose who flew from New York and once mailed me a 10-pound note from Europe and told me never to spend it because it meant luck. I thought of floors, how you test them, how you trust them, how you fix them, how you know when to step back and let them dry. I can't marry you today, I said. My voice did not shake. I don't know what we will be after today. I know I need time, not to punish you, to see if the floor can hold. He nodded slowly, a man counting backward with care. I'll wait, he said. I'll listen. I'll go where you need me to go. Good, I said. Then start by staying here while I speak to our guests. I turned to the door. The handle was cool in my hand. I felt like a person about to step onto a stage with no script and a clear voice. Behind me, Daniel said my name once, like a prayer that cost what it should. I opened the door and walked toward the hum, ready to pay in full for the truth. I pushed open the door and stepped into the hallway that led to the sanctuary. The air was cool and thick with flowers. A volunteer had taped a small envelope marked "Tips" to the guest book, and I noticed someone had slipped in a few bills, $5s and $10s curled like shy hands. On a side table sat our favors, little jars of honey with labels that said "Sweet Beginnings, Claire and Daniel." My name shone back at me, sweet and wrong. I straightened one jar, as if that could fix the day. Then I walked on. The sanctuary hum washed over me, voices, shuffling, a low laugh, a hush. I saw Sarah in the front pew with the program in her lap, chewing the edge like she did in school when we waited for grades. I saw Aunt Rose with her neat hair and her bright scarf, waving when she caught my eye. I saw Michael slide into a side seat, shoulders squared, the tie still hanging loose around his neck. I saw my mother near the altar, talking to the choir director and counting chairs like a captain counts heads. The band sat to the left, bowing string softly, a gentle song like a memory of summer. I walked down the center aisle and faced them all. I did not climb the steps. I stood with both feet on the floor because I wanted to feel the ground answer me back.
Hello, I said.
My voice carried more than I expected. The room leaned in, the way a field leans in when the wind starts. I'm Claire. You know me. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the gifts, for the flights, for the dresses and suits and the time off and the hotel rooms. I know what all of that costs. My father had taught me to add, so I added with my eyes gas and tolls and rooms and shoes, all the dollars a day like this demands. The sum was a weight and a proof. Love has a receipt. I took a breath and kept going. There won't be a wedding today. A soft sound rose, then fell, like a small bird behind glass. We are safe. We are loved. We need time. That was all I said. I did not tell the kitchen story or the lemon smell or the word kiss. I held those inside where they belonged. I have always believed a person should get to choose where their hard truth is set down, and today I chose here, and only this much. The room stayed silent for a beat, and in that beat, I felt something steady under my shoes, as if the floor had agreed with me. Then the sound returned, gentle and kind, coughs, a few sobs, tissue paper rustling like small wings. Sarah stood, came to me, and pressed her forehead to mine. "I've got you," she said. We didn't cry. We breathed. The band stopped playing. The choir director nodded once, as if to say, "This is the song now." My mother climbed the steps to the microphone and, in her calm event voice, told everyone there was food paid for and they were to eat it. "Please stay if you wish," she said. "Please go if you need." She named the room with the coffee, the hallway with the snacks, the place by the lawn with the small tent where kids could run. She thanked the caterer by name. She said we would be in touch about gifts later and that no one was to worry about the money. I loved her fiercely for that, even as my heart was busy breaking. People came in small waves. They hugged me with care, as if I were a cup full to the lip. Michael squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Anything you need." My old professor from Chicago said, "A day that begins with truth is not wasted." Cousin B from New York pressed my hand and joked, "I wore good shoes for you. I'll break them in at the buffet." Aunt Rose slipped me a folded note, £20 for luck, the same as always, and then, remembering, swapped it for $20 with a wink. "America," she said, "is stubborn and so are you. Good." We both smiled at that because it felt true twice. I moved through the crowd like a slow boat. I ate a strawberry because Sarah put it in my hand and told me fruit was non-negotiable. I drank water because my father put a cup into my palm and said, "Hydrate like a pro." I watched children chase each other between chairs and thought of floors again, how children don't check them before they run. They trust the ground because it has always held. I wanted that kind of trust back the way a person wants a lost ring. Emily arrived, pale and brave. She kept a fair distance until I gave a small nod. Then she came close enough to say, "I'm here." I looked at her and saw my sister in every year at once. The girl who taught me to braid, the teen who stole my sweater, the woman with the jar on the shelf marked, "House Fund." "We will talk," I said. "Not now." She nodded. "Not now." The caterer, a sturdy woman with kind eyes, slipped me a plate wrapped in foil. "For later," she said. "No charge." I tried to refuse. She said, "I understand costs," and I let the plate rest in my bag like a small anchor. In a corner, my mother and father spoke to the manager about the bill. I knew they would make sense of it. They have always made sense of money and mess, even when both come at once. The hour stretched. It did not snap. Guests filtered out with waves and soft promises. The choir packed their folders, hands quiet. The band carried cases past me like careful furniture. The sign on the easel still said, "Welcome," and I didn't hate it. Welcome can mean come in, or we see you. I felt seen and very tired. When the room was mostly empty, I went to the front pew and sat. The cushion side. Sarah sat beside me, my father behind us, my mother standing in the aisle like a lighthouse. Through the side door I saw a slice of lawn, green and open. I thought about going out there and breathing until my ribs remembered how to lift without counting. I thought about calling Daniel and telling him the part that stayed unspoken, that love remained, but it would not be the boss of me. Not today. Instead, I stood and looked once more at the space where a wedding was supposed to be. I said thank you in my head, to the chairs, to the flowers, to the people who came, to the dollars that tried to make a dream. Then I walked back down the aisle. The floor under me held. Not new, not perfect, strong enough for the next step. Night came down on Boston like a soft coat, and the church emptied to a hush you could fold and put in your pocket. We packed the favors, stacked the programs, and left a plate of cookies for the custodian who always smiles at brides. My mother, Linda, signed a revised bill with the manager. Less for the band, less for the choir, some credit for food the guests ate, still a loss that stung. Numbers moved from one column to another like tired birds. My father, Mark, pressed his hand to my back, a small, steady weight. "Home," he said. I nodded. Home was a word that still worked. We drove to my parents' place in their old neighborhood. The porch light made a pool on the steps, and the geraniums looked brave in the glow. Inside, the house smelled like clean laundry and cinnamon. My room, the one with the pale curtains and the bookshelf we built with a kit that cost $39, waited for me like a good chair. Sarah texted once, "I'm proud of you." Michael sent a simple heart. Aunt Rose wrote, "Sleep, dear heart. Call tomorrow. I'll bring coffee." I answered each with short words, the kind a tired mind can carry. "Thank you. Love you. Tomorrow." I washed my face and braided my hair. I took off the ring and set it in a small dish with a chipped edge. It looked both bright and quiet, like a coin in a museum. I lay in the dark and listened to the house breathe. Pipes, the refrigerator hum, the settled creak of old wood that has learned each footstep by heart. Across the hall, my parents spoke low. I knew the shape of their talk without hearing the words. Love, money, plans, hope, grief, casseroles. I thought of Emily at the Blue House in Cambridge, sitting at her table with the lemon smell still in the air, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. I thought of Daniel in his suit, tie off, cufflinks in his palm like small questions. I breathed in and out until the room loosened its hold. Sleep came in short pieces, like a bill paid over time. Morning was clean and new. I woke to the sun cutting a neat line across the floorboards. I made the bed the way my mother taught me, tight corners, smooth spread, because order is a kind of mercy. In the kitchen, my father poured me coffee and slid over the foil-wrapped plate the caterer had slipped into my bag. Eggs, a roll, a piece of fruit. "Eat," he said, and I did.
Food helps you speak.
My mother sat with her planner open, a pen tucked behind her ear. "We'll handle the returns," she said. "We'll send notes. We'll make a list of who needs a call. You will do only what you want." I loved her so much my chest hurt. "All right," I said. "Short things first. The long things later." By mid-morning I walked alone, jacket zipped, hands deep in pockets. Boston on a bright day is a true friend, frank, brisk, a little loud, full of salt and promise. I passed a shop window where a dress on a headless form looked like a solved puzzle. I passed a sign that read, "Houses wanted," as if a house could get lost and leave a note. I stopped by a tiny park and sat on a green bench that needed paint. Children climbed. A dog tugged. A runner tied one shoe and then the other and jogged away with a pace that said practice, not escape. I opened my phone and wrote to Daniel. "Meet me by the river? Noon." He answered at once. Yes. We met by the rail, where the water moves like a long thought. He looked tired and honest, which is not nothing. He reached for my hand and then waited. I let my hand rest in his for a count of 5 and then took it back because the count helped me know where I was. We walked. I told him about the sanctuary and the way the room leaned in and the small bird sound and my mother's clear voice. He told me about the side room and the way time felt like a slow wave he could not climb. "I will go to counseling," he said. "I will answer any question. I will sit with silence. I will not defend the worst minute of my life. I will wait without sulking and stay without begging." The words were careful and plain. They did not ask me to pay for them. I stood at the rail and watched the water carry small leaves past the pilings. I thought of floors again, how a good repair takes time and weight, and a willingness to leave the room while the boards cure. "I want a plan," I said. "Not a wish. 6 months of counseling. No secrets. Weekly notes about money and time, because money and time tell the truth. A pause on big buys. No ring on my hand while the floor is still wet. We speak to Emily together, and then I speak to her alone. We tell the story only where it belongs." He nodded at each line like a man signing for a package. Received, received, received. We walked to a cafe and sat with 2 waters and 1 muffin we broke and shared because that felt right for the math. The bill was $6.40. He reached for it. I left 2 $1 bills and a $5 and told him to get the next one. Small fairness can hold a day together. We talked about Chicago and the day with the book that cost $2 and the hot chocolate for $3.50 and how first things can be true without being the last word. We agreed to call Sarah and Michael, and then my parents, and then to leave our phones in our pockets for the afternoon. When we stood, the sun had shifted, and the water looked new though it was the same river. We hugged in the way you hug someone you love and are learning again. Close, but with a little space left for air. Then we walked in different directions, not as a break, but as a promise to meet later with cleaner minds. That night, back in my parents' house, I took out a jar and wrote future on blue tape and stuck it to the glass. I dropped in $10. It made a light sound, like a bell with hope inside. I wrote my first note for counseling: floor, jar, doors, truth. I set the ring back in the dish and turned off the light. In the dark, I could see the shape of a house with a red door and a porch swing that does not wake on its own. I could see me on the step, in America, holding a key I've earned. I am Claire. I am not done. I am only getting honest, and that is a kind of beginning that will hold.